We lived an extremely anomalous life. My husband is an artist, a sculptor, and he was accommodating to and understanding of.
For 45 years, Meryl Streep and Don Gummer were the gold standard in Hollywood. Their marriage was a quiet testament to enduring love in a world of fleeting romances, a partnership that seemed as solid as the Oscars on their mantelpiece. They weren't just a couple. They were an institution, a symbol of stability that other stars could only dream of. But behind the red carpet smiles and a still visible wedding ring, they were hiding a profound secret. For more than 6 years, the couple lived completely separate. Lives and the world had absolutely no idea. This is the story of the silent separation they engineered and what finally brought the truth to light. It's a story of calculated privacy, quiet dignity, and the hidden truth behind one of the most admired relationships in modern history. What truly happened to Hollywood's most steadfast couple? The answer is far more complex than anyone could have imagined. To understand the shock of the revelation, you have to appreciate the masterpiece of a public image Meryl Streep and Don Gummer built over 4.5 decades. Theirs wasn't a loud, headline-grabbing love affair. It was a quiet, sturdy, and deeply private partnership that felt refreshingly real in the often superficial world of fame. They were the exception to the rule, the couple that made it, the ones who proved a lifelong bond was possible even under the relentless glare of the spotlight. They first met in 1978 under the most tragic of circumstances. Streep was reeling from the loss of her boyfriend and the Deer Hunter co-star, John Cazale, who had just passed away from lung cancer. Lost in grief, she suddenly needed a new place to live. Her brother, Harry, came to the rescue, bringing a friend along to help, a sculptor named Don Gummer. In a simple act of kindness that would change both their lives, Gummer offered Streep his vacant apartment while he was away traveling. What began with an exchange of letters soon blossomed into a romance, and just 6 months after Cazale's death, Meryl and Don were married in a quiet ceremony in her parents' garden. From that day on, they built a life intentionally shielded from the public eye. While Streep was becoming arguably the greatest actress of her generation, Gummer was a celebrated artist in his own right, a contemporary sculptor whose work was shown in galleries all over the world. He wasn't an actor or a director. His world was separate from the Hollywood machine that defined his wife's career. In interviews, Streep often said this separation was a key to their stability. She talked about how Gummer helped her find balance, acting as the anchor for their family while she was away on location, making sure their home was a sanctuary. They chose to raise their 4 children, Henry, Mamie, Grace, and Louisa, not in the heart of L.A., but on a sprawling private estate in Connecticut. It was a conscious decision to give their family a shot at a normal life, far from the paparazzi. Over the years, Meryl would occasionally offer little glimpses into their private world. In a 2002 interview with Vogue, she shared her secret to a long marriage, goodwill and willingness to bend, and to shut up every once in a while. It was a candid and practical piece of advice that perfectly summed up their partnership. She acknowledged the constant negotiation it takes to raise a family, saying, "But I have a holistic need to work and to have huge ties of love in my life. I can't imagine eschewing one for the other." That quote became the definitive statement on their marriage, a partnership built on mutual respect, flexibility, and a deep understanding of each other's passions. Gummer was a quiet but constant presence at her side during awards season. He was the handsome, supportive husband in the front row and the first person she thanked in her acceptance speeches. The most famous of these moments came at the 2012 Academy Awards when she won for The Iron Lady. With tears in her eyes, she started her speech by saying, "First, I'm going to thank Don because when you thank your husband at the end of the speech, they play him out with the music. And I want him to know that everything I value most in our lives, you've given me," the world swooned. It was a raw, beautiful, and seemingly spontaneous declaration of love that cemented their status as Hollywood's most beloved couple. This was the image they presented to the world, a love born from tragedy, nurtured in privacy, and sustained by unwavering support. They were Meryl and Dawn, the unbreakable couple. And that is why, when the truth finally came out, it felt like a narrative twist so unbelievable it could have been ripped from one of Streep's own movies. On a seemingly ordinary Saturday in October 2023, the story of Hollywood's most enduring marriage was shattered. The news broke not with a dramatic press conference, but with a quiet, surgically precise confirmation that was all the more shocking for its simplicity. A representative for Meryl Streep released a statement to outlets like Page Six and People magazine, and the words sent waves of astonishment across the globe. Dawn Gummer and Meryl Streep have been separated for more than 6 years, and while they will always care for each other, they have chosen lives apart. The world did a collective double-take. 6 years? It seemed impossible. How could a secret that huge be kept for so long, especially by someone as famous as Meryl Streep? For over half a decade, the public had been watching a performance, and we didn't even know we had tickets. The reveal was stunning, not just because the marriage was over, but because of the sheer audacity of the secret they had managed to keep. The timing made it all the more bewildering. Just a month earlier, the couple had quietly marked their 45th wedding anniversary. And even more confusing, Streep had been seen wearing her wedding ring right up until the announcement. Just days before the news broke, she was in Spain accepting a prestigious award, her gold band firmly on her finger. For years, that ring was a symbol of their unbreakable bond. It turns out it was also a prop. Suddenly, their public appearances were cast in a new, fascinating light. The last time Meryl Streep and Dawn Gummer were photographed together was at the 2018 Academy Awards. She was nominated for The Post, and he was right there by her side, the proud, supportive husband. They smiled for the cameras and played their parts to perfection. But according to the timeline, by that Oscars ceremony, they were already separated. They were living apart, but presented a united front to the world, a final, flawless performance as a couple. After that night, Dawn Gummer seemed to vanish from public events. Meryl continued to attend premieres and award shows, but she went alone or with her children. At the time, nobody really noticed. People just assumed he was a private man who preferred his art studio to a chaotic red carpet. No one suspected his absence wasn't a choice, but a reflection of a fundamental shift in their relationship. The statement that they had chosen lives apart was a masterclass in public relations. It was gentle, respectful, and free of the messy details that usually come with a celebrity split. There was no blame and no bitterness, but the politeness of the statement couldn't contain the public's shock. It raised far more questions than it answered. How did they pull it off in an age of social media and constant surveillance? Their 4 adult children never let a single word slip. The family had maintained a wall of silence so disciplined it was a work of art in itself. The mystery of Meryl and Dawn had only just begun. Once the shock wore off, everyone was left asking one burning question. Why? What could lead a couple who had weathered 4 decades of Hollywood pressure to quietly walk away? What happened behind closed doors that led them to choose separate lives? Meryl, true to form, has never publicly explained the reasons for the separation. Her silence is part of her brand, an elegant refusal to feed the gossip machine. But in the absence of a direct explanation, a more nuanced picture emerges. This doesn't seem to be a story of a single dramatic event, but of a slow, quiet, and mutual uncoupling. The most compelling theory is that they simply grew apart. It's a common if heartbreaking story for many long-term couples. Their lives, while connected, ran on very different tracks. She's a global icon whose work demands constant travel and immense emotional amicable. The official statement's emphasis on how they will always care for each other seems to be the truth. They had built a life, a family, and a mountain of shared history. There appears to have been no big betrayal that would require a messy, public fight. They may have simply decided that a quiet, private separation was enough. It allowed them to disentangle their lives without destroying the foundation of respect and affection they still had for one another. Ultimately, the end of their marriage seems to be a story about evolution. People change. The love that bound a 29-year-old actress and a 31-year-old sculptor in 1978 isn't the same love that exists between two people in their 70s. Meryl Streep and Don Gummer's separation wasn't a failure, but a quiet, dignified acknowledgement that their path together had reached its end. They chose to honor the decades they shared by ending their romantic partnership with the same grace and privacy with which they had lived it. To really grasp the complexity of Meryl and Don's 45-year union, you have to go back to the very beginning. A story born from the ashes of one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking love affairs. In 1976, Meryl Streep, a rising star in the New York theater world, met the love of her life. His name was John Cazale, an actor's actor, revered for his intense, soulful performances as Fredo in The Godfather and in every other film he touched. They fell deeply and immediately in love. Their future seemed limitless. But in 1977, that future was stolen. Cazale was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. From that moment, Meryl's life changed. She became his devoted nurse and his unwavering champion. She took roles she had little interest in simply to be near him and to pay for his mounting medical bills. She fought for him to be cast alongside her in The Deer Hunter, a film that would become his final role and her breakout performance. For 5 agonizing months, she rarely left his side. She would read to him and perform comedy routines, doing anything to lift his spirits while knowing their time was running out. On March 12, 1978, John Cazale passed away at the age of 42, with Meryl by his side. Her world shattered, and right in the middle of that raw, overwhelming grief, Don Gummer appeared. Cast out from the apartment she had shared with Cazale, she was adrift. Her brother Harry, a friend of Gummer's, introduced them. Gummer, a sculptor, was about to leave on a trip and, in an act of profound compassion, offered Meryl his Soho loft as a place to stay. While he was away, they started writing letters. He became a distant, supportive friend as she processed her grief. When Gummer returned, their friendship blossomed into something more. He was a calming, steady presence in the storm of her grief. 6 months after Cazale's death, in September 1978, Meryl Streep and Don Gummer were married in a small ceremony at her parents' home. At the time, the speed of their union raised eyebrows. To some, it seemed impossibly soon. But Streep had just seen firsthand how fragile life could be. In Don Gummer, she had found a source of light and stability, and she chose not to wait. Their marriage wasn't a replacement for the love she'd lost, but a new chapter built on empathy and kindness. Their 45-year partnership was forged in the crucible of heartbreak, a love story that began not with a fairy tale, but with a quiet act of human decency. With the 6-year secret finally out, the world is watching Meryl Streep navigate a new chapter of her life. The end of her romantic partnership with Don Gummer has marked a new era for the legendary actress. And in true Streep fashion, she's moving forward with grace, energy, and a surprising new narrative that has Hollywood buzzing. Perhaps the most unexpected twist is the persistent rumor of a new romance. The speculation centers around her Only Murders in the Building co-star, the beloved comedian Martin Short. Their on-screen chemistry as the quirky, theater-loving couple Loretta and Oliver was a highlight of the show, and it didn't take long for fans to wonder if that spark had carried over into real life. The clues, while circumstantial, have been fun for fans to follow. Streep and Short have been spotted together numerous times, looking comfortable and happy. They were seen laughing side by side at the Golden Globes and were even photographed holding hands at a premiere after-party. In March 2025, an insider reportedly told Page Six the two had been dating for well over a year and that Meryl couldn't help but fall for Martin. For their part, both of their reps and Short himself have publicly stated that they are just very close friends. But whether they're a couple or just best friends, their connection is undeniable. Martin Short, who was married to actress Nancy Dolman for 30 years before her passing in 2010, shares with Meryl a history of long-term love and loss. Their bond seems built on a foundation of shared experience and mutual admiration, which is heartwarming to see, regardless of the label. Professionally, Streep continues to thrive.